I still remember that night so clearly. The house was warm, the smell of roasted chicken filling the air, and I was standing alone in the kitchen folding napkins. My hands were steady, but my mind was spinning. For years, my sister Brielle had called me lazy, useless, a dreamer who would never get anywhere. And the worst part? Everyone believed her. They laughed at her jokes, nodded along when she bragged about her perfect job, and let her words about me hang in the air like they were truth. I tucked one last napkin onto the stack and took a deep breath. Tonight wasn't just another family dinner. I told myself that over and over. Tonight was different. From the kitchen, I could hear Brielle's laugh floating down the hall, sharp and confident. She always made sure her voice was the loudest in the house. I peeked through the doorway for a second. She was standing in front of the mirror, fixing her hair like she was about to walk into a spotlight. My parents moved back and forth behind her, setting plates, carrying dishes, humming along to the rhythm she always seemed to control. I slipped my phone out of my pocket and glanced at the notification that had popped up earlier. Just seeing the subject line made my stomach twist with a mix of fear and pride. I didn't open it again. I didn't need to. The truth was already sitting in my bag, zipped up, waiting for the right moment. I carried the napkins to the table, smoothing each one down in front of the plates. My father, Grant, walked by and patted my shoulder absently, not even noticing the storm building behind my quiet smile. My mother, Evelyn, glanced up from the serving tray and gave me a quick, tired smile before hurrying away again. No one asked how I was. No one wondered what I'd been working on. They never did. Brielle's heels clicked against the hardwood as she entered the dining room. "Oh, good. Natalie's actually helping," she said with that half smile she'd perfected, the one that made her sound playful but cut like a knife. My cousins chuckled softly from the corner and I kept my head down. Let her have her moment. Let her think I was small. The chairs scraped as everyone started to sit. The table glowed under the chandelier, the silverware polished, the food steaming. I pulled out my chair and sat at the far end across from Brielle. She tossed her hair back, already launching into another story about a promotion, a client who adored her, how hard work always pays off. Her words filled the room, bouncing off the walls, and for once I didn't shrink under them. I just sat there, quiet, my hand resting on the bag beside me. The sealed folder inside felt heavy, almost alive, pressing against me like it knew its time was coming. I lifted my head, looked straight at Brielle, and thought, tonight, everything changes. Growing up, it always felt like Brielle had the world handed to her. She was the golden child, the one who got the best grades, the first to get a shiny new car, the one whose smile filled every picture on the mantel. And me? I was the background, the afterthought. I can still see the graduation photo hanging in the hallway. Brielle beaming in her cap and gown while I stood off to the side. Clapping, pretending to be proud, but inside wishing just once it could be me. They looked it that way. It never stopped. Every holiday, every dinner, she found a way to slip in her success and twist the knife in me. "Natalie's still working on her little ideas," she'd say, her voice syrupy sweet. Everyone would chuckle like it was harmless, but it wasn't harmless. Those words stuck to me like glue. At birthdays, she'd lean over and whisper, "When are you going to do something real with your life?" Always smiling, always making sure no one else heard. I tried to ignore it, but it built up. I remember one Thanksgiving she announced to the whole family how her boss said she was the smartest employee he'd ever had. Then she looked at me across the table and added, "Not everyone can handle responsibility, right, Nat?" The whole room laughed. I laughed too, because what else could I do? What they never knew was that while they were laughing, I was working. Late nights in my bedroom with a borrowed laptop, balancing it on my knees because my desk was too cluttered with scribbled notes. I'd spend hours staring at lines of code, fixing mistakes, building again, breaking again, starting over. My best friend Maya was the only one who believed in me. She'd come over with pizza, sit on the floor, and test out every broken version of the app without complaining. She'd smile and say, "You're onto something, Nat. Don't stop." There were nights I cried in frustration, deleting everything only to rewrite it the next day. Rejection emails piled up in my inbox, each one a reminder that maybe Brielle was right. Maybe I really was chasing smoke. But then a small message from a beta tester would come through. Just one line saying, "This actually helped me." And it was enough to keep me going. I didn't tell my family. Not one word. Why would I? Every time I had shared an idea before, Brielle tore it apart before it had a chance to breathe. So I learned to keep quiet, to let my silence protect me while I worked in secret. I told myself that one day the proof would be too big to ignore. And then, that day came. Months of sleepless nights turned into a single email. A signed contract. $2 million. I stared at the screen, hardly breathing. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just about me winning. This was about finally breaking free from her shadow. And that's why I carried that folder into the dinner. Tonight, the truth would finally speak for me. Dinner started off the way it always did. Loud, full of chatter, Brielle in the center of everything. She had this way of grabbing attention without even trying. She leaned back in her chair, glass of wine in her hand, talking about some big project she just landed at work. My parents hung on every word. My cousins laughed at every punchline. And me? I sat at the far end of the table, pushing food around my plate, waiting. At first, I thought maybe it would stay light. Maybe she'd just brag and leave me out of it for once. But that was never Brielle's style. She glanced at me, smirking, and said, "You know, Nat's probably still tinkering with those little ideas of hers." Her tone was playful, but everyone knew it wasn't a compliment. The table chuckled softly, and I felt the heat rise in my face. I tried to ignore it. I sipped my water and kept my eyes down. But she didn't stop. She leaned forward like she wanted the whole table to hear. "Honestly, I don't know how you do it, Nat. Just floating around, wasting time while the rest of us are actually working hard. Must be nice." The room went quiet for a second, then my uncle let out a laugh and the others followed. I smiled weakly, pretending it didn't sting, but inside I was boiling. She knew exactly what she was doing. Then she said it. The line that cut deeper than any of the others. She set her glass down, pointed her fork in my direction, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Let's be real, Natalie. You're never going to be anything." The sound of it hit me like a slap. Forks paused in midair. My mom's eyes darted toward me, then quickly back to her plate. No one defended me. No one said a word. Just silence and the weight of her words hanging in the air. I felt the blood rush to my ears. For a second, I thought I might cry right there at the table. But I forced myself to breathe. In, out, calm. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I looked at her, really looked at her, and all I could see was that smug grin she always wore when she thought she'd won. My father cleared his throat, trying to move the conversation along, but the damage was done. Everyone had seen me put back in my place, small and powerless, just the way Brielle liked it. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this was the last time she'd ever get away with it. I sat there still, my hand brushing against the folder tucked inside my bag, and I told myself, wait, just wait. Because the moment she thought she'd crushed me for good was the same moment everything was about to turn upside down. I sat there in silence for a moment, the sting of her words still hanging in the air. Everyone had gone back to their food, pretending nothing had happened, but my chest felt like it was on fire. My hand slid down to the side of my chair, brushing against my bag. I could feel the folder inside, heavy and certain. That was when I knew. It was time. I pushed my chair back slowly. The scrape of the legs against the floor made everyone look up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't snap back. I just stood calm, steady, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. "Can I say something?" I asked. The room went quiet. Brielle leaned back, smirking, like she was waiting for another excuse to laugh at me. I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder. My hands didn't shake, though I thought they might. I laid it down right in the middle of the table, sliding it across the polished wood until it rested between the serving dishes and the wine glasses. Everyone stared, confused. "What's this?" my dad asked, his fork paused midair. I looked straight at Brielle. "It's the reason you'll never call me useless again." Her smirk wavered, just a little. She reached for the folder, flipping it open like she expected to find some silly notebook doodle. But her eyes froze when she saw the header, the name of the company, the signatures, the big bold number on the page. $2 million. The silence that followed was deafening. My mom leaned in, squinting at the document. My cousins leaned over their plates, whispering. My dad's face went pale. "And Brielle?" She blinked, then laughed nervously. This has to be a joke." "It's not a joke," I said, my voice low but firm. I pulled out my phone and tapped the screen, showing them the email with the confirmation, the contract details, everything. "It's real. I signed it yesterday." The table erupted with questions all at once. "What's it for?" "How did you—" "When did this happen?" But I didn't look at them. I kept my eyes on Brielle, watching as the color drained from her face. She shook her head, forcing a laugh that didn't sound like her anymore. You expect us to believe this? You couldn't possibly—" I cut her off, still calm. "It's an app I built. The same little idea you've been mocking for years. And now it's worth more than your entire career." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. The room had shifted. For once, she wasn't in control. I sat back down, folding my hands in my lap. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to brag. The paper on the table said everything for me. And for the first time in my life, I watched Brielle struggle to find her voice and come up empty. The moment the number sank in, the entire room froze. I could almost hear the air leave their lungs at the same time. My mom's fork slipped against her plate with a sharp clink. My dad's jaw tightened, like he was trying to piece together how this could even be real. And then there was Brielle. Her face went blank for the first time in her life, eyes wide, lips parted. She reached for her wine glass but fumbled, and instead, her phone slid from her lap and crashed onto the floor. The sound echoed through the dining room like a gunshot. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. My cousins exchanged looks, whispering under their breath. One of them muttered, "$2 million?" Like they couldn't believe they were saying it out loud. My mom reached forward, her fingers trembling as she touched the paper, tracing the company logo at the top like it was some kind of holy text. Brielle finally found her voice, but it came out shaky. This can't be real. You're making this up." I leaned forward, calm as ever, and slid my phone toward her. On the screen, the email was still open. Signed, sealed, undeniable. "It's real. Every word. Every number." She shook her head, desperate, her voice rising. No, you can't expect us to believe that you—" I cut her off, reading one line from the agreement out loud. "This contract confirms the purchase of the exclusive rights for the application developed by Natalie Monroe in the amount of $2 million. My voice didn't waver. The words were crisp, sharp, final. The silence that followed was heavier than before. My dad leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead like he'd been blindsided. My mom looked from me to Brielle, her eyes wide and wet. "Natalie, why didn't you tell us?" she whispered. I shrugged lightly. "Because none of you would have believed me." Brielle opened her mouth again, but no sound came out. She looked small, smaller than I'd ever seen her. The smirk she always wore was gone. Her hands trembled as she reached for the contract again, as if staring at it long enough might change what it said. For the first time, she didn't have a comeback. For the first time, her voice didn't carry over the room. And I just sat there steady, letting the silence do the talking for me. My uncle finally broke it with a low whistle. "Damn," he muttered under his breath. "She really did it." All eyes turned back to me, but I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. I had waited years for this moment, and it was everything I thought it would be. Watching Brielle's power slip through her fingers, watching her struggle to hold on to the control she had always wielded, it was better than shouting, better than revenge screamed in anger. It was quiet. It was final. It was mine. The room was still buzzing, but not with the same energy as before. Nobody laughed. Nobody dared make another joke at my expense. The weight of what I had just shown them hung in the air, thick and undeniable. I sat there for a few moments longer, letting them all sit with it. Letting Brielle sit with it. She kept staring at the papers, her lips parted like she was trying to form an argument, but couldn't find the words. My mom looked between us, torn, her hands folded tightly in her lap. My dad kept rubbing his temples, his expression stuck somewhere between confusion and disbelief. Finally, I pushed my chair back and stood up. The sound of the legs scraping against the floor seemed louder than it should have been. Every head at the table turned to me. I picked up my bag, slid the folder back inside, and slung it over my shoulder. "Where are you going?" My mom asked softly. "Home," I said, calm and steady. "I think dinner's over for me." My voice didn't shake. For once, I wasn't the nervous one. I wasn't the girl shrinking in the corner of the room. I was the one walking away with proof of who I really was. Brielle stood up suddenly, her chair nearly tipping over. "Wait! You can't just— Natalie, you can't just drop this and leave!" Her voice cracked, desperate. The power she once held over me was gone, and she knew it. I looked at her, really looked at her. For years she had towered over me, mocking every dream I had. But now, standing there in her expensive dress with panic written across her face, she didn't look powerful at all. She looked small. "Yes, I can," I said quietly. The silence after those words was deafening. No one else dared to speak. I reached for my coat hanging by the back of my chair, slipped it on, and gave the table one last glance. My cousins stared wide-eyed. My uncle shook his head slowly, and my parents sat frozen, still trying to process the shift that had just happened. I didn't need applause. I didn't need validation. All I needed was to walk out of that house with my head high, and that's exactly what I did. When I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me, and I finally let myself breathe. For the first time in years, my chest felt light. I pulled out my phone, opened the app dashboard, and watched the numbers tick upward. Real people were using it. Real people were benefiting from the work I had poured my heart into. A soft smile tugged at my lips. Not because I had beaten Brielle, but because I had finally proven, to her, to my family, and most importantly to myself, that I was never useless. I was never lazy. I was never nothing. I walked down the driveway, the glow of the house fading behind me, and whispered to myself, "This is just the beginning." If you felt something in this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss more moments of revenge, drama, and real-life lessons. I'd love to hear your own experiences too. Share your story in the comments, because this is a place where your voice truly matters.